Insert go in. Batman. Keep them up, yum yum.
Gentlemen, ladies, welcome back. Sandamtod here. I hope I'm in frame. I'm trying to shoot the vid in the room with the new cam to see if it gets better light, because my other cam has a little bit of a clear picture, but the light has to be like super bright in order to get the best picture. And this one may record in a little better in a lower light setting, so I thought I'd give it a whirl. So I hope I'm not leaning in on you or too out of frame or whatever, because I can't flip it around and see if I'm in frame or not. But anyway, that's all beside the point, folks. It's all beside the point. We're here to do a community question response to Interghost. This is his own idea, his own question that he came up with that was cooking in his brain, and he wants to know what video games you played as a kid and where you played them at, because his point was he didn't play them at the arcade for the most part. It was here and there, and at the bowling alley or at the pool hall or at the swimming pool, things like that. Laundromat. I know here in America you pretty much find a video game machine at any gas station, any laundromat, any bowling alley, any place. I mean, they had them everywhere. And starting off, I'm not sure, because the excuse me, the arcade games that he picked came out when I was a teenager, and I think he's a few years younger than me. I'm 37, and he had said he remembered playing like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at the arcade and The Simpsons and stuff, and those kind of came out when I was like 14 or 15, and when he says kid, I think of below 13, because then you're a teenager. Up to when I was about 12 is what I consider being a kid, so that's what I'm going to stick with, even though I did play those games. I remember playing the Turtles game and the Simpsons and the X-Men arcade, the big 6-player one at the same time. That was pretty wild back in the day. Because you never had 5 buddies with you. There was always a couple strays that would come and join in the game, And anyway, I'm jumping ahead. The first video games I really remember playing, I lived in a small town north of where I live now by about 30 miles, named Holt. And it's still a one-horse town. I mean, they don't even have, still to this day, don't have a stoplight in that town. And it was one of those things where there wasn't a lot of video games, but in a way there was. I mean, it's kind of strange, because even though it was such a small town, there was a laundromat, and they had a pool hall, and the gas station downtown, and then my grandmother's restaurant was about a mile away, maybe 2 miles away from where we lived, but it was more up off of the highway, and the town actually is situated kind of off the highway, probably a quarter to half mile. And so some of the first games I remember playing was Now, the pool hall wasn't open all day long. It was kind of open in the evening, so adults could go and play pool and stuff. But, kids could go in there. I mean, they didn't serve, like, liquor or anything. But kids were supposed to be, like, guided, parental guidance. But I remember inside there, we went down there once or twice, probably when I was, like, 7 or 8. I think my mom had remarried my stepdad, and he shot pool quite often, billiards, whatever you want to call it. And I think we went down there and we all, got a soda and stuff, and they had 2 arcade games in that pool hall. One of them was a Berserk game, and one of them was Donkey Kong. And neither one of those games can you last frickin' 30 seconds on unless you're like, one of these whizzes that have like the world high score record or whatever. I was never good at Berserk or Donkey Kong, really. But those are some of the first couple I remember actually playing down there at the pool hall. I was probably, like I said, 7-ish. Also, they had a gas station and kind of a convenience store type of deal. And actually, they sold bait and tackle out of there, too. So it was kind of a bait and tackle shop and a gas station. And, they sold comic books and pretty much anything, Because it was a small town. They didn't even have a grocery store. So, I mean, you're pretty much buying most of your crap at this convenience store until you can go into the city and get groceries and stuff. But I remember this... it was called Busy Bee, and they had like a little bait, like I said, bait and tackle area, and after a while they kind of phased that out, but they still had the area where they had these like minnow, troughs and stuff, and so they put video games in there, and I remember 2 for sure that they had there, and one of them is the one that I still really would like to get an arcade machine for, and I had an opportunity about 2 years ago to get an arcade for this game, and I would have had to drive to Columbia, Missouri, but the guy was selling it, I think, for $250, and he had pictures posted, and it looked good and everything, but the weather was just really shitty 2 years ago around the time that he had it posted, and I just didn't think it was a good idea to go by myself to Columbia, which I'm not familiar with, really, and try to pick up this arcade machine and lift it myself and everything. So it just, by the time I was able to kind of think it through and get kind of my thoughts in order as to doing it, he had sold it. So, but that's the game Ye Are Kung Fu. It's one of the very first kind of 2-player fighting game, where you fight against each other. I don't think you did on 2-player. I think you still fought against the computer. You didn't actually fight, against each other. But you would fight like a guy with a pole and a guy with a chain and a girl that had ninja stars and fans that they would throw at you and things like that. And it's one of the games that I dumped a lot of money into back in the day, and it was one of the few that they had out there at that gas station. And they also had Akari Warriors, which Akari Warriors... At the arcade, you might as well just throw your money in the toilet and flush it. I mean, it's like over in like 2 seconds. The only way to really play it's to play it on like the 8-bit Nintendo with the fast ABBA code and keep reviving yourself. It's the only way to have any fun when you're playing it. So I didn't play Akari Warriors. I usually played this Ye Are Kung Fu, and I still, like I said, would like to get an arcade machine for that game someday. I think it would be really cool. But they had those forever there, and then this other little, this town, I'm telling you, they had a little cafe downtown named Rosie's Cafe, and that's where like all the old men got up in the morning and went and had coffee and gossiped and sat around and shit like that and stuff. But other than that little cafe, there wasn't any other restaurants in the town itself. My grandmother's restaurant was up on the hill, what they call up on the hill, but it was, about 2 miles away up by the interstate from my house. And so they put in another little, like, you know, kind of all American food type of, you know, burgers, fries, onion rings, you know, tenderloin sandwich, that type of stuff kind of place, and they called it the Wagon Wheel. So this Wagon Wheel, you know, was like a little restaurant, but they ended up getting a couple of arcade machines as well. I remember they had well, for sure they had a Donkey Kong Jr. machine, because that's the one that I usually played. I think they also had a Space Invaders machine, but I didn't play Space Invaders really that much. And I think they might have had a Centipede game as well. I think one of those cocktail table centipedes where you sat down. Those were always kind of cool, the cocktail ones versus the ones that you had to stand up at. It's almost like you're playing a different game in a way. But, I don't know, I was just like kind of enthralled with Donkey Kong Jr., even though I could never like get past the second board. I mean, it was like ridiculous. But those places were close, and I could actually walk there, even when I was 7 or 8 years old. I mean, when you're living in that small of a town, everybody knows everybody. And I could pretty much walk down there and play those games in the afternoon after school and stuff. And, so that was pretty cool. So I usually played either Yi Kung Fu or Donkey Kong Jr., and the pool hall was usually closed during the day. And so the only other place to play games in Holt was up at my grandma's restaurant. They owned a bar and a restaurant that were right next to each other. Not like a bar and grill like Applebee's, where they have the bar in the middle and then all the seats around. This was more like there was a bar and then there was the restaurant. And so during the day, though, they could have, because they serve food in the bar and stuff, you could have they almost had like swinging doors that they would lock in the evening, but they would open up, and you could go into this one part of the bar, and there were I think there was a pinball machine at one point. I don't remember what pinball machine it was, but they had these 3 cocktail table games and like two pool tables up there, and the cocktail table games were a game called Phoenix, which is kind of like a Galaga style shoot at the things coming down the screen type of game. They also had a game called Mappy, which you're this mouse in a little cop outfit chasing this cat who stole all this stuff, and these mice, they're little cats, I think, that stole all this stuff, and you're trying to get all this stuff back, and you basically bounce around on trampolines and pick up stuff. I mean, that's about what you do, so. And they had a regular Pac-Man game, Pac-Man, not Miss Pac-Man. It seemed like everywhere you went, there was Miss Pac-Man, but they never had Pac-Man. So it was kind of strange to go up to the restaurant and play Pac-Man, because I was so used to the Miss Pac-Man board, and Pac-Man board was laid out different. And so we played up there, and usually we could play up there, you know, my grandma would give us quarters or whatever, so we could kind of play up there for free, which, you know, I mean, or we'd do some work for her, take the trash out or something, she'd give us $1, you know, so we'd play some games or something, so. I remember that. I mean, I was probably, we're talking 7 to 10, you know, that age range, and then when I was in 6th grade, I moved from Holt to Independence, which is where I live now, but I've moved out of Independence and back a couple of times now. I'm back, baby. But when I moved in the city, it was a little harder to play arcade games. They weren't just right up the street anymore, and, you know, the city, you know, there's more traffic and stuff. My mom was a little more concerned about us, you know, running around. And none of the gas stations in the city really had arcade games. At least not the couple that were close to our house. So the only time I would play arcade games was if I went to the arcade, which was out at Independence Center, which was really rare, or, as I think Interghost said, the bowling alley. My stepdad and my mom, and then I think for a couple of bowling seasons, and then just my stepdad for I think one, or maybe it was him alone in the beginning, and then they both went or something. But for a few league seasons, they bowled, and it was usually a few hours. You'd be there, and they'd take me and my sister, or if we were go over to friends or whatever. But I'd usually go because they had the arcade. And the games I remember from the arcade in the city versus what they had out in Holt was, for one, the Gauntlet game, the 4-player at the same time Gauntlet game. I still remember the first time I saw that machine, and there was a guy, and he was working on it. They had the switches inside and stuff, and he had the top raised up like this with the 4 controllers on it. And he was doing something on the inside. I don't know if he's configuring something, or whatever. But he put a bunch of free credits on there, and then he actually flipped the thing down, and he was actually controlling like all 4 of the guys at once with like his hands like this, with like his pinky on one thing and his thumb on the other, and was like moving them to make sure they were all moving them or moved. It was kind of bizarre. And then he saw me standing there, and he was like, he kind of, said, "Here, you do one." And, he kind of gave me a free game, because he was like, made sure it was work. He locked, the thing back up, and then he kind of walked off, and the game was still going, So I remember that. That was the first time I ever saw Gauntlet, and, it was really cool at the arcade. It's definitely a time killer. There's not a lot of point to Gauntlet, but it's fun. And you can play 4-player, and that was the first 4-player game I ever saw at the arcade. Also, the 2 that stand out in my mind, I mean, there was a bunch, like Track and Field, Spy Hunter, Moon Patrol, those 3 for sure were in there. They had one of those afterburner pinball games. I think they had Pac-Man Jr. I mean, this was a big arcade for a bowling alley. But the 2 that I remember that I ended up spending most of my money on were Shinobi and Double Dragon. Mainly Shinobi. I played the shit out of Shinobi when I was a kid. And it's just, I'd sit there and watch people play. A lot of times I watched people play more than I was playing myself. Because my mom would give me like $3 or something. It's like, make that last 3 hours, That's gone in like 15 minutes, But the Shinobi arcade game, I still really love it. I like to play it on the emulator and stuff. That was pretty cool. And then the first kind of co-op-y game, I mean, like I said, Gauntlet was a 4-player, but the first kind of co-op-y type of game I played was Double Dragon. And I remember going to the arcade and, playing Double Dragon with somebody I didn't know. And I remember I kind of came into the game kind of late in the game. And I don't remember what the deal was. I think there was this guy standing there that had never beat the game. He died. That was what happened. The guy that was there died. It was this. He had to have been like 25. This guy, and he's like, I was probably like, I don't know, 12. And he died, and we had just made it to the end, and kind of were fighting the end guys, and he died, and he offered to give me $5. If I would let him take over my game, because he wanted to beat the end guy. And I don't know why he didn't just go get cores. I guess he thought maybe it'd be over by then or whatever. So I said sure and gave it over to him and let him beat the game, and he gave me $5. So I was like, that's cool. But yeah, those 2 were killers. That's kind of where my kid like range ends. Like I said, it's like right there. Like Interghost talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mercs. Those games had to have been out when I was like between 14 and 16, and I don't really consider. I mean, you're still a kid, but I consider kid up through 12, and then you're a teenager. So we'll end it with that. But if you guys want to share your arcade experiences in the comments. Let me know what you played as a kid, maybe where you played it. I remember playing at laundromats. You know, it seemed like every laundromat had a Miss Pac-Man game, at least, you know, that you could play. I remember this donut shop my dad used to take us to sometimes on the weekends when we'd go stay down there, had a Donkey Kong machine. But you could just find them anywhere. You know, there's the big stand-ups, and then there's the cocktail models, and oh yeah, another game I didn't talk about. This is one of my favorites from back then, but was the original, the Star Wars, the one that was all wireframe and actually had the Ben Kenobi voice, and he's like, "May the Force be with you," and it sounded like really bad, but it was like the first time I ever remember hearing a voice in the game, and you could hear R2 kind of beeping and stuff while you're playing it, you know. And I don't know, I thought it was badass. But the best one was the one that you could get in and sit in and actually kind of play. I don't know if it tilted or not. Some makes me think it did. Some of them did tilt, but most of them I just think were regular cabs. But to actually get in and sit in it and feel like you're kind of in a TIE fighter sitting there was a lot different than doing it on the stand-up one. I remember going to I think it was another bowling alley. It had a huge, like, I think they had mini golf and stuff too, though. They had a huge arcade, and they had one of the sit-down Star Wars, and that was badass. I was just like, you know, that was one of the best things I could ever have played, you know. And, you know, I totally enjoy video games. I love reminiscing about that stuff, playing those games when I was a kid. That's just some of them, you know, but, you know, that was before Nintendo. I mean, that's where you got the good graphics, you know. It was at the arcade. The Shinobi graphics. I remember seeing Shinobi and Double Dragon and just being like, this is insane how good this looks compared to Atari, you know, or whatever. Even in 87, you know, I would have been like 12. That was the first time I saw Nintendo. And arcade graphics were still better than Nintendo, you know. I mean, they kind of around the 16-bit era into the 30, you know, kind of 32-bit era is about where the arcade level of graphics kind of started to plateau. And, I don't know. I remember playing a lot of games. Hard Driving, RoboCop, the Turtles in Time, 720 Degrees, John Elway's Quarterback Club, Primal Rage, Bad Dudes. Love Bad Dudes. I don't know. Just so many games. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. If you want to do video responses, I would post them to Interghost because it's his tag, and I'll put a link to his channel on there. If you want to do a video response, I know a lot of times it's a little hard to get a video response together. It was kind of hard for me to get this one together, but I did it. So anyway, but please leave comments. Let me know what you played and where you played it, because I want to know, and I'll enjoy chatting with you about it in the comments. So, anyway, I'll sign off till next video. I haven't been shopping, so I don't know what's going on. I really haven't gotten to use this camera, so that's why I'm trying to use it tonight. And that's it. I'm going to get out of here. So, until next video, we'll see you, and have fun at the arcade. Bye.